Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour and a privilege to rise on behalf of the New Democratic Party as their small business critic in support of this motion, in support of the motion put forward by the PC Party. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I want to set the stage a little bit as small business critic, because I think this is part of a larger war on small business that the McGuinty government has been waging for some time now. You know, on Saturday evening, Toronto Association of Business Improvement Areas celebrated 40 years of wonderful work in our communities across Ontario. Happened to start in my own riding in Bloor West, where the very first BIA started in the world, and they have been standing up for small business ever since. And you know, we hosted in the New Democratic Party a press conference. This is going back a ways for Tabia to come here to protest the introduction of the HST, because it's going to hurt small business as well as pharmacists. It's going to hurt all small business. 85% of their members are opposed to it. We had a press conference here, and the government wouldn't even meet with them. We remember back, many of us, to the fact that many small independent butcher shops went out of business when this government, through regulation again, brought in onerous regulations. It would cost the average butcher shop somewhere in the order of, similar to what it's going to cost pharmacists, about $200,000 to $300,000 to meet the regulations. Most of them went out of business. It was ostensibly done for health reasons too. However, listeriosis didn't start from independent small butchers, it started from Maple Leaf Foods. I mean, over and over again, we see this government taking the part of big business over small business. This is another instance exactly of that, of course spun very differently, and I'm going to talk about how it's spun very differently. And it's not the first time they've attacked small independent pharmacies either. I remember the WSIB regulations where, you know, only some pharmacies, guess who, guess where, could process WSIB prescriptions, not my local independent pharmacist. Again, another attack on local independent pharmacists on behalf of large chain pharmacies. This is what this government does. The very symbol of what this government does is the fact that in the recent cabinet shuffle, they don't even have a minister in charge of small business anymore. They just eliminated small business right out of the portfolios. No small business ministry portfolio. That's what this government has done for small business. And over again, we are seeing bankruptcies across our communities of all sorts of small businesses because of the actions of this government. You know, we in the New Democratic Party stand up for Main Street over Bay Street. We stand up for Main Street over the Mall. We want to see our main streets, whether in rural Ontario, Northern Ontario, or downtown Toronto. We want to see vibrant main streets exist. We want to support young and small entrepreneurs. Guess where big business comes from? It comes from small entrepreneurs who grow into large ones. This government is doing nothing to help small business, and small business accounts, let us not forget, for 90% of the jobs in Ontario come from small business. So that's the general, atmosphere of Queen's Park ever since the McGuinty Liberals got elected. This is just another aspect of that attack, just another aspect. Then we move to the direct attack on independent pharmacists. And I just want to highlight a letter that I received here. It's from Dan Yurchuk from High Park Pharmacy in my riding. And he says, I've calculated this funding cutback will cost his pharmacy over $200,000. I have no idea, he says, how to absorb this loss without a drastic cut to the services we provide our patients, the reduction of staff and pharmacists, increased charges to my patients. I'm scrambling to figure out what to do. I don't get it. I don't get it. What is the point of this measure? Has the government not sat down with small business, with small pharmacists to talk about this? Have they not listened? And these are healthcare workers, that this government has really, declared war on with this measure. It's outrageous. And you got to love the spin, Mr. Speaker. You got to love the spin that's played out in the press on this, that this is about saving patients money and this is against Big Pharma. Give me a break. Come on. We all know 76% of the drugs out there are patent drugs. They're not generic drugs. That's 24% of the drugs. 24% against 76%. This government isn't taking on Big Pharma. They're taking on an Indigenous industry of generic drug manufacturing in this province. They're going to cost 9,000 jobs just from the generic drug. I mean, my goodness, that's what they're doing. They're not taking on Big Pharma. They're taking on generic drug manufacturing here. Give me a break. Give me a break. The spin is absolutely out of whack. Absolutely out of whack. It has no bearing on the reality of the situation. Absolutely out of whack. So, I mean, 24% is shared. And, you know, quite frankly, we in the New Democratic Party, and I'm sure the pharmacists that are here, are in favour of reduced drug costs. Of course we are. There are other ways of getting there. Other ways of getting there without putting independent pharmacists out of business. And there are lots of other ways of getting there. My goodness. You know, these might even, as you've heard, these might even raise costs. These might even raise costs. We as a party federally have proposed a national policy of pharmacare. European countries have it, others have it. I mean, we certainly believe that everyone should have access to the drugs they need, to the prescriptions they need. But you don't do that by putting independent pharmacies out of business. You know, quite frankly, who's going to gain from this? It's going to be the big pharmacies. The big pharmacy chains are going to gain from this because they sell everything else as well as prescriptions. They'll gain. They can weather the storm. They can weather the storm. The Minister of Health knows this. Her brother-in-law sits on the board of Shoppers Drug Mart. She knows they're going to weather the storm. She knows they're going to weather the storm. They'll do just fine, and they'll do better, quite frankly, because they'll have driven all their competition out of business. They'll driven all their competition out of business. And guess what? Guess what? You know, guess what happens when you drive competition out of a market? We know that. Prices go up because they can, because there isn't competition. That's what happens. That's what they're doing. You know, it's interesting. One of my local pharmacies, I was happy to go to the ribbon cutting. I guess I'm going to be going to his closing now, too, on Roncesvalles Avenue. And he said to me, you know, he said, if you go into Shoppers, it costs $11.99 dispensing fee. He says, I charge $9.99 dispensing fee. I mean, think about it. Think about it. Think about it purely from a competitive aspect. Again, the spin has nothing to do with the reality of this move. Nothing to do with it. And the motion